Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is James Elsmore. I just want to give you some technical directions before we get started. First of all, it would be great if you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat box. When you're typing a message in the chat, you'll see that little blue box that's a drop down, and select all panelists and attendees so everyone sees your message. So go ahead and let us know who you are, where you're joining from today. If you have any questions, please add them to the Q&A box, not in the chat, so our moderator can easily find them. And finally, please note that the session is being recorded and that the recordings from the showcase over the last 2 days and all the webinars and the weeks ahead will be available afterwards and sent out. And with that, I'll hand over to the moderator.
Hi there, and welcome to the first webinar of the UN Environment's Global Environment Facilities Blue Forests Project Month of Blue Forests webinar series. My name is Stephen Lutz, and I am project coordinator of the Blue Forest Project. And today we'll be joined by an international panel of experts to discuss multi-scalar Blue Forests policy. Before introducing today's panel moderator, I'd like to give a little context from the Blue Forest Project relevant to what will be next elaborated in our session today. This includes the types of local, national, and international policy frameworks and options most often associated with the management of blue forests like mangrove forests, seagrass meadows, and salt marshes in order to support climate change mitigation, adaptation, biodiversity, and economic livelihoods. I'm going to start a wee presentation right now in 2 secs. Share screen. Okay, so a little bit of context first on the Blue Forest Project. In 2015, the UN Environment Blue Forest Project was launched to address the challenges associated with unlocking the values of coastal carbon and ecosystem services and converting them into options for improved ecosystem management. Prior to the project, the science around coastal blue carbon and ecosystem services contained many gaps, and there were very few proof of concept or on the ground examples around the world. Additionally, the international community did not fully recognize the value of these ecosystems for climate change mitigation. The Blue Forest Project has been key in overcoming these hurdles in order to effect a truly transformative global impact on coastal ecosystem management and sustainability. The end result is a project that is definitely punched above its weight, and you will hear from some of our partners in today's session. A little bit of context on Blue Forest policy. So blue forests are coastal and marine ecosystems that store carbon and support a multitude of ecosystem services and co-benefits. And these include food security through protein from fisheries, recreational opportunities from fishing, nature viewing and swimming, shoreline protection from storms and flooding. Blue forest ecosystems are also provide for biodiversity and other ecosystem services such as cultural heritage and can be intrinsically connected with the health of nearby coral reefs. And Blue Forest policy, the Blue Forest policy setting is essentially how we as humans manage our interactions with these ecosystems and the benefits we derive from them. This occurs at multiple scales, from the local, including community-based management, direct exploitation activities, restoration activities, marine protected areas that cover these coastal and marine ecosystems, or state or national level policy for the management of specific types of ecosystems, such as a national mangrove management plan, and how these ecosystems are recognized in international commitments such as Ramsar and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And these are the types of policy pathways or options that the Blue Forest Project has followed and achieved results in. This includes exploring the enabling policy setting for establishing community-based carbon finance projects in Kenya and Madagascar. At the national and local scales, exploring similar at both scales for mangrove conservation agreements between communities and the government in Ecuador, harnessing the value of blue forests to support existing and new conservation and climate policies and goals in Mozambique and the United Arab Emirates, and supporting countries recognizing the value of blue forests in actions to fulfill the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, on this slide that I'm showing here, this is based off a pathways approach that we developed back in 2014, based off the Abu Dhabi Blue Carbon Demonstration Project. And before implementation of Blue Forest, we really didn't have an idea of how these pathways could translate into sustainable policies. But you can see by the blue arrows on the right of the screen that now we do. We've actually realized this in a number of countries. And just to let you know, the main products, lessons learned, and guidance from the Blue Forest project, including Blue Forest policy pathways and options, is now being assembled in our Blue Forest Global Solutions web-based toolkit. This website was launched yesterday as an early access version. The tools, training, and capacity building that are needed to achieve Blue Forest solutions are included in this website through a series of question and answers. We want to demystify blue carbon, demystify harnessing ecosystem benefits and options for sustainable blue forest policy. To explore, just a little advertisement on the toolkit. To explore policy options related to blue forest and blue carbon policy, head to the policy page. We have the policy page divided into local, national, and international commitments. Each of these has their own Learn More page, where we have the relevant questions. For example, on the international policy page, we have questions like, what is the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and how does blue carbon fit under it? Or how do countries recognize blue forest ecosystems and blue carbon in their nationally determined contributions? This question involves inventories and online searchable databases, or at least the answer to this question involves inventories and online searchable databases that can help policymakers, researchers, and other stakeholders gather insights on countries' recognition of the climate mitigation and adaptation values for these ecosystems. And one of the searchable databases you can head to is Climate Watch, where you can use key terms such as mangrove, seagrass, wetlands, or even blue carbon, and find out how countries are recognizing these ecosystems in mitigation and adaptation actions. Okay, you can also find some policy research and analysis that the project has supported on NDCs, and some guidance on incorporating for countries in incorporating the value of blue carbon in their NDCs. Now, to explore local policy, different scales of policy that we have here, you can click on the local policy tab, and then you'll be sent to our local policy page, where we have a series of questions related to community associations. These include, what is a Blue Forest Community Association? How are Blue Forest Community Associations formed, and how are they managed? From here, you can click through to our case studies or learn more on our resources page. Okay, so on the resources page, we have links to resources and information such as the Kenyan Local Mangrove Forest Participatory Management Plan. And this is the plan that enabled the local communities, that enables local communities in Kenya to receive payments from the voluntary carbon market. Okay, so they needed this certification. So that's an important step in the process for community-based voluntary carbon market projects. You can also link over to the Mikoko Pomoja community organization page. And that's a community organization that was formed to help manage the proceeds and the management of this carbon offset project, okay? We also have a wide range of communication materials and examples to support advancing blue forests and blue carbon policy options and engagement at multiple levels. So examples drawing on the different case studies that we'll have and the experiences of the Blue Forest project. So please explore the Blue Forest Solutions website. This website is a product of all of our partners. Is it intended as a resource for everyone? As I mentioned, this is an early access version, and we will be updating for version 1.0 as we head into July. Please expect that functionality will improve as we update. Also, as this is version 1.0, please expect further iterations. We would love to work with you all in further developing this and turning this into teaching and training modules for implementation. Yes, that's where we're headed. And now I'd like to hand the floor over to Gabriel Grimstitch, who is a Program Management Officer with the Marine team at the United Nations Environment Programme, based at their global headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. He leads UNEP's work on coral reefs and blue forest ecosystems and has been working on blue carbon since 2009. Gabe, as soon as I close off, you can close off the screen. You can take over.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Steve, for the introduction and for that really wonderful presentation on the Blue Forest Toolkit website. I think it's going to be a really very useful resource for practitioners from around the world. As Steve mentioned, UNEP has been very active in the world of blue carbon since 2009, supporting the publication of important reports on the issue, and which led to growing interest in the role that coastal ecosystems can play in carbon sequestration and mitigating climate change. UNEP also worked together with Grid Arendal to develop and implement this GEF project that has produced such wonderful results and has had such great impact around the world. And it really has been one of the pioneering investments in furthering the blue carbon and the blue forest agenda globally. So we have a wonderful panel today, some really great professionals from around the world, some experts in their fields, some people who have really, pushed the blue carbon agenda in their own countries or in the places that they work. Before I introduce all the panelists who will be speaking today, there's actually one panelist who unfortunately will not be able to join. That's Dorothy Herr of IUCN. So we'll start the panel by playing a recorded video from Dorothy, which is a presentation on blue forest policy from yesterday's showcase event. So let's hear from Dorothy now, and then I'll introduce the rest of the panelists. Thank you.
Everyone for hosting this event. Yeah, it's been quite a while when this family started to grow, and it's nice to see those pictures from some time back where we were still able to meet in the field. I want to, James, I think you might need to go on mute. Thank you. I want to pick up on points that Steve just made in the presentation before, and I think just to underline as well that when we say blue carbon, that does not necessarily mean carbon offsets or carbon projects. So there's certainly more programmatic and national level work that can equally sort of fall under this banner of blue carbon. And as was said before, there are sometimes also restrictions or certain views vis-a-vis the use of carbon markets and offsets in general. So I will speak a little bit about the policy world, primarily on the more international side. And this is for those who have not been so familiar with where this has all started from, and apologies for those who might have seen a similar presentation just last week in the Blue Carbon Conference. But the fact to actually use the management of marine and coastal ecosystem for climate change mitigation is already enshrined in the 1992 Climate Convention. But it was only in 2009 when the discussion around the forestry and REDD took really off, and then into the peatlands, as Steve showed us. It was around 2009 when the scientific and the conservation community came together and promoted and published a few blue carbon documents that then actually coined the word way back in 2009. I think a big milestone also for the more national level accounting was the 2013 technical and scientific information around national greenhouse gas inventories, which had a coastal or wetlands supplement with specific coastal chapter in it. And that, I think, pushed forward quite a bit the blue carbon agenda globally. And then I think the next milestone, of course, as many of you are aware, vis-a-vis the Paris Agreement and also the inclusion of increasingly NDCs or blue carbon in NDCs, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. But here we are, 2021. There is indeed action on all fronts. We've heard quite a bit already what happened on the community project level, as well as from a scientific point of view, the Blue Forest Project, but also many other initiatives over the course of the last 10 years, invested in various scientific assessment. There were new partnerships that were formed, like the International Partnership for Blue Carbon that was or is driven by the government of Australia. With the Blue Forest Project, we were able to provide guidance on how to assess what are the options on a policy level vis-a-vis blue carbon, whether that is linked to some more marine related policy instrument, more to some coastal management action, or indeed in the bigger context of climate mitigation or adaptation. And we applied this policy framework to the countries that were more strongly associated with the Blue Forest Project. But then it was nice to see that it was picked up by the International Partnership for Blue Carbon, who then also brought it to their broader membership. But again, over the course of the years, the focus shifted a bit towards the nationally determined contribution. So basically the national goals that each country puts themselves vis-a-vis achieving the Paris Agreement and the Paris goal. And most recently, we also looked at, well, what does actually all this ocean nature-based solution blue carbon mean for the UNFCCC global stocktake? This is a report that came out 2 weeks ago, and we have a webinar actually next Tuesday. So if you're interested, I'm happy to share that information. But basically every 5 years, and this is the next slide, if you see at the bottom in blue, the global stocktake, every 5 years, countries come together in a process to actually check how good or how bad are we doing on reaching the Paris Agreement. And it's supposed to be part of this so-called ambition cycle, where countries then in the following NDCs that are to be submitted, that the ambition is increased, that more is being done towards climate mitigation as well as adaptation. And I think here again, a point that Leah made very clearly, these coastal ecosystems have a high carbon value, and which is to some degree a good driver for action, but there's obviously much more to these ecosystems than just carbon. So again, this is just a cycle or graph to show you that within the process of the UNFCCC, countries are regularly coming together to check on some of the work or the action, more to say, being done. And it's important that the coastal ecosystem and the management thereof is part of this various steps, including then also the IPCC assessment reports. This is just to give you a quick overview on where do we stand vis-a-vis NDCs and blue carbon. This is the first round of NDCs that we reviewed jointly around 2015-16, and this was now a compilation we did with the University of Oxford across, all type of ecosystems, so not just blue carbon, but vis-a-vis coastal wetlands. The bottom line at that time was 28 countries included coastal wetlands in terms of mitigation, 59 countries vis-a-vis some broader adaptation action. There is, as some of you are aware, there is ongoingly still NDCs coming in for the current 2020-21 cycle. There are other efforts again going on to review these NDCs, and again here a report is forthcoming, and also to put this a little bit into perspective vis-a-vis those numbers that we came up with or that were analyzed in 2015-2016. So stay tuned for that. As a bit of a teaser, here we have the Chile NDC, and I believe it was also Steve who said the growing importance vis-a-vis marine protected areas. So while carbon per se is not mentioned here in this particular NDC, it's still the bigger picture of how to support, conserve, restore marine coastal ecosystem through protected areas with concrete management plans. So seeing these broader ocean topics in the current round of NDCs is extremely encouraging. And James alluded already upon that specifically other countries like Kenya made very specific references to blue carbon in their NDCs on some sort of broader, nature-based solutions, or for readiness assessment, etc., to be able to, in the next round of NDCs, have even sort of higher, hopefully higher ambition, as well as more quantitative numbers that can make it into the targets. And herewith, I'm gonna finish off is the reason why is it so important? Like, why do we bother with all these NDC talk that you might hear so often? A big part is also finance. It really shows within a country's NDC, where do they set their priorities? And if blue carbon or coastal ecosystems aren't in an NDC, it gives a bit of a hint that the country doesn't pay so much attention to it in the broader climate change context. But if they are in there, these are very good arguments for us vis-a-vis the broader funding community, but also vis-a-vis the more private sector finance, to sort of say, look, this is a priority. We need to do more in this area. And as you can see from this graph, from a very recent publication from UNEP, that there is still an extreme big need for money, basically, for nature-based solution, which includes, in this case, also the coastal conservation and restoration. So I think for those of you that are engaged more on the national policy level, I think it's really another big argument to sort of say, well, first, for the priorities of the countries themselves, using national finances to the extent possible, but also giving really the signals vis-a-vis the international community what finance is needed. And again, here, this sort of triple win between
So thank you very, very much, Dorothy Herr, for that presentation, which was a recording, since very unfortunately she's unable to join the panel today. So now I'll start by introducing the panel members who are here today and who are joining us from around the world for an exciting discussion about blue forest policy. We have panelists from many different continents. So we're joined by Dalila Sequeira of the World Wildlife Fund in Mozambique, Joseph Langat of the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. I think he's at the coast in Kenya, and Angela Rubada of the Abu Dhabi Global Environmental Data Initiative. So I'm going to begin by asking each panelist to introduce themselves and to describe their work to the audience in how it pertains to blue forests or blue carbon policy. Audience members, don't forget that you're free to ask our panelists any questions you'd like throughout their introductions and throughout the webinar, but please make sure to do so in the Q&A window below instead of the chat function. So please do use the Q&A window and not the chat function when you're asking a question. So let's begin with Dalila in Mozambique. Please introduce yourself and give us a bit of an overview of your work in about 7 minutes. Thanks. Over to Dalila.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity. I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, great. So my name is Dalila Sequeira, and I work at WWF Mozambique. I'm a senior marine officer based in northern Mozambique, currently at the coastal area, Nampula province in Angoche. And I'm going to talk to you about mangroves in Mozambique and how the value of mangrove carbon and other ecosystem services have been incorporated into policy at national level in Mozambique, and specifically about the recently approved mangrove management strategy. So mangroves are an important national and natural heritage for Mozambique, and in Africa, it's the second country considering mangrove cover, following Nigeria, with an estimated cover of about 300,000 hectares. Although there is increasing recognition of the role of mangroves in protecting shorelines from extreme climatic events, both locally and regionally, Mozambique has faced severe mangrove degradation and loss of this valuable habitat in an annual estimate of around 88 hectares a year, mainly due to urban expansion, but also to unsustainable use of mangroves by coastal communities, namely for building and for fuel wood. Recognizing the ecological value of mangroves, concerns regarding degradation are now very high on the agenda of government of Mozambique. There has been building a political and strategic framework focused on mangrove conservation, management, and restoration. Until very recently, there was fragmented and different legal tools pertaining to mangroves and lack of a specific instrument to guide mangrove work, causing a lot of difficulties in understanding and enforcing the legal framework governing mangroves in a consistent and comprehensive manner. The Blue Forest Project Mozambique intervention, which is our intervention here in Mozambique, has conducted several studies, mostly focused on the Zambezi River Delta, which is the largest mangrove area in Mozambique, located in the center of the country. And it's aiming at promoting better management of coastal ecosystems by harnessing the values associated with ecosystem services and with carbon. Some of the main studies conducted under the Blue Forest Project include a pre-feasibility study on carbon in the Zambezi Delta mangroves, ecosystem services valuation of mangroves in the Zambezi Delta, which evaluated ecosystem services at approximately $1 billion USD per year, mangrove mapping and change analysis, which identified proposed two community conservation areas within the Delta. These are some of the results, and also a national blue carbon policy assessment for Mozambique. These studies were carried out in partnership with national academic institutions such as universities, the University Eduardo Mondlane, or through specialized consultants. And results of some of these studies have contributed to increase understanding of the value and importance of mangroves, including blue carbon and ecosystem services, which is crucial to improve protection and management of these important coastal ecosystems. So through the Blue Forest Project, through our intervention here in Mozambique, and in collaboration with the government, we have been able to coordinate the development of the National Mangrove Strategy, which was approved in 2020, so last year, for a period of 5 years, 2020 until 2024. And this has been a very key step, and as it is the very first policy tool specific for mangroves in Mozambique. The National Mangrove Strategy identifies national targets to be met regarding restoration, for instance, mangrove restoration, as well as priorities for mangrove management in Mozambique. Highlighting the need for effective management involving all mangrove ecosystem stakeholders, and consider blue carbon as a way to implement a sustainable finance mechanism for mangrove conservation. So this is within the National Strategy, Mangrove Strategy, approved last year. The National Strategy also includes an action plan that identifies specific actions that the government of Mozambique proposes to be developed in order to achieve national and international objective commitments. One of the commitments was to restore 5,000 hectares at the UN Nations Conference. And another one is the launch of the National Mangrove Restoration Program, which will be launched on the 26th of July, 2021, so next month, and which is an opportunity to disseminate the mangrove strategy, mobilize stakeholders to engage in its implementation, improve guidance on restoration initiatives, as well as create awareness on the importance of this ecosystem. So this strategy calls upon interinstitutional, so between institutions, involvement between institutions and political will, as well as joint engagement of multiple governmental agencies with a role on mangroves. As well as NGOs, national governmental organizations, civil society organizations, local communities, and private sector. All of these stakeholders are required to promote mangrove conservation, and this has shown to be the way forward for mangrove conservation in Mozambique. The approval of the mangrove strategy has set a new phase with hopes for mangrove management and for conservation in Mozambique. And through the Blue Forest project, we are building foundations for a potential mangrove carbon project in Mozambique. So thank you very much. This is all I had to share with you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dalila. That was really fantastic and amazing to see the progress in Mozambique. Congratulations on all the great work there. Next, I'd like to invite Joseph Langat to present from Kenya. Over to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel, and all the panelists. My name is Joseph Langat. From Kenya. I work with Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, and Kenya Marine and CAMFRI is government institution mainly mandated to carry out research on marine and fisheries, both in the marine and the terrestrial ecosystems or freshwater systems. Mangrove is part of the work in which CAMFRI has been doing research for over 30 years now. And this enable the scientific work which has been done has enabled to come up with a number of strategies and framework in which to enhance the management of mangrove ecosystems in Kenya. Kenya has about 54,000 hectares of mangroves, and which is compared to mangrove, Mozambique, our mangroves are very small in coverage, but they help a lot because of supporting livelihood supports from the coastal communities. We have mangroves until 2018 were the only natural forest in Kenya in which they were licensed for logging, because they are used by the local communities to construct their houses and also for firewood. So historically, the mangroves of Kenya have been exploited as far as the 19th century, where mangrove poles were exported to the Middle East, the Arabian countries in the Middle East. And so in that case, they were subjected to a lot of pressures and degradation. But restoration work started as early as also around the start of the 20th century, where a number of restoration work were done in Lamu, which is the northern part of the coast. So building on that and the number of restoration activities which have been done and the research activities which have been done, the government of Kenya started valuing or looking at the importance of mangroves, both to the local people and also as a national asset, which can be used for example in climate change mitigation. So this process started with a number of, after having a robust scientific work, the government also started doing reforms, both both in policy and legislative. The first was the Forest Act, because mangroves are gazetted and mangrove areas are government land, which are managed by Kenya Forest Service. So the first reform started with the forest policy or forest operation, in which the Forest Act came in 2005, and this one allowed management of forest resources with the local communities in order to, this was aimed at reducing pressures on the mangroves, because when the local communities are involved, they are able to also be custodians of the mangrove forest. So when this Forest Act was introduced in 2005, it came with what we call the Community Forest Association, where people who are living adjacent to the forest can form a Community Forest Association, which is a legal entity registered at the Attorney General's office, and can sign a management agreement with Kenya Forest Service so that they can manage, and they will have a number of programs, community programs, which could be to increase their livelihoods. So that was on the policy reforms. I mean legislative reform. And then in 2010, the government of Kenya enacted a new constitution. And in this same new constitution, it brought in the issue of public participation, where the state is obligated to involve the local communities and all the citizens in environmental conservation. Specifically, the constitution also brought in the issue of increasing forest cover to 10% of this is now anchored in the constitution. So it's just a constitutional obligations. And in that case, also all the laws regarding climate change work came in. So the same year, 2010, government of Kenya came up with what we call a National Climate Change Response Strategy, which was launched in 2010. And in this case also, it brought in more emphasis on looking at environmental integrity. And then 2013, towards the issues of, after Kenya recognizing that climate change is a serious problem, because our economy is mainly agriculture dependent. So Kenya is very vulnerable. Our economy is sensitive to environmental change. So the government again came up with what we call the National Climate Action Plan of 2013. And in this, in this NCCAP, restoration of degraded areas was brought in this plan, and it included mangrove areas where they are supposed to be restored, in addition to arid and semi-arid areas. So in 2015, when the Paris Agreement came in, the National Climate Change Adaptation Plan also gave birth with what we call the second national communication, which again emphasize the issues of including, or even though the mangrove forest and other blue carbon ecosystems are not specifically mentioned, but it gives a general principles in which these ecosystems can be made. And then based on research and science, which were done, they came free in association or in partnership with several international and local organizations, started building work on using mangroves as payment for ecosystem services. And the work started in around 2003 with the collaboration from Napier University, Earthwatch Institute. So the bulk of scientific information which were generated in this partnership gave birth to the first carbon offset project, which is called Mikoko Pamoja. And this one came into being because the community was able to form the Community Forest Association, and they signed an agreement with the Kenya Forest Service and used now the mangroves of one of the mangrove areas as a pilot. This was like piloting the carbon offset project, which as we speak now, another pilot project has been extended to the southern part of Kenya, which is Fanga Blue Forest. It's called Fanga. So the community offset project is called Fanga Blue Forest, which started in 2019. So, so that is mainly what Kemfree did. And then later, again, in the year around 2013 to 2017, with collaboration with other state organs and non-state actors, Kenya came up with what we call the National Mangrove Management Plan, 2017-2027, which is a 10-year plan. This was launched in 2017. So, and in it, it has captured many issues, including community programs, where the communities will be able now to utilize some programs for their livelihood support. And then when the NDC Paris Agreement came, the first NDC in Kenya did not mention specifically the blue forest or anything on ocean climate action, but there was still the 10% tree cover, in which mangroves were one of the areas where rehabilitation could be undertaken. Now, when the revision of the first NDC came in, Kemfree in collaboration with other other actors came in and included now the we now have in the 2020 NDC the mangrove ecosystems, including the seagrasses, and currently we are doing now the blue carbon assessment in order to integrate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for your very detailed overview. And yeah, I think it's safe to say that Kenya has been really one of the pioneers and one of the global leaders in blue carbon. And there's so much to learn from the experiences of the Kenyan Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. So we hope that during the panel discussion, we'll be able to get into more of those details. And finally, our third, last but not least, panelist is Angela. From the Abu Dhabi Global Environmental Data Initiative. So over to Angela. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Hi, everyone. My name is Angelina Rubada, and I am the project coordinator for the Abu Dhabi Global Environmental Data Initiative. So as you may already know, Abu Dhabi, the UAE, is an intervention site for the GEF Blue Forest projects with Ajiti as the project partner. UAE was actually one of the first countries to recognize the importance of coastal habitats, including mangroves, salt marshes, and seagrass meadows, with mangrove restoration and conservation efforts implemented since the 1970s. In just over 40 years, Abu Dhabi has evolved from a small fishing community to the largest of the 7 emirates of the United Arab Emirates. This national affinity to the sea has led to the initiation of the UAE Blue Carbon Project, which explored the values of coastal ecosystems and what they provide to the UAE and how they help preserve the UAE's environmental and cultural heritage. So phase 1 of this project is the Abu Dhabi Blue Carbon Demonstration Project, which began in late 2012, supported by the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi and an expert team led by Grid Arundel, including UNEP, WCMC, Forest Trends, and a group of world-class coastal carbon scientists. The findings of the project illustrated the full potential of coastal ecosystems for carbon storage and their other benefits. This project has been groundbreaking and truly meaningful for Abu Dhabi and the UAE in a way that it has made significant contribution to the understanding of blue carbon stocks in the UAE, and the values of which have then supported the formulation of the policy frameworks and strategies implemented at the federal and emirate level. Internationally, the project helped guide other blue carbon initiatives to develop the science and data management tools, creating a sophisticated methodology for continuing the preservation of blue carbon habitats. The success of the Abu Dhabi Blue Carbon Demonstration Project prompted the initiation of Phase 2, known as the National Blue Carbon Project, in partnership with the then Ministry of Environment and Water, now Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, and implemented in collaboration with the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi and the competent authorities of each emirate. This project has expanded the science to the northern and eastern regions of the UAE and further extended the understanding and valuation aspects of coastal blue carbon ecosystem services, particularly mangroves, wherein the findings were also incorporated into policy development. So at the emirate level, the values of blue carbon and related ecosystem services resulting from these projects were incorporated into policies and plans for coastal and marine management, as well as climate change mitigation for the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, with recent ones such as the Abu Dhabi Vision 2030, specifically Plan Maritime 2030 and Environment Vision 2030, and is also within the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi's research agenda. So these are also included in the UAE's National Biodiversity Strategy 2014 to 2021, the National Climate Change Plan 2017 to 2050, which enhances mitigation and adaptation co-benefits through carbon sequestration from blue carbon ecosystems. In the UAE's first submitted NDC in 2015, also announced the development of strategies and plans to improve coastal blue carbon ecosystems through restoration and plantation efforts. Furthermore, AGD, in partnership with Grid Arundel, spearheaded the Oceanic Blue Carbon Project, which is the world's first pilot test study on oceanic blue carbon, specifically biomass carbon. The analysis represents the world's first oceanic blue carbon audit and policy assessment at the national level and allows relevant policy and management entities in the UAE to evaluate options for the potential implementation of oceanic blue carbon policies at the local and national level. Findings from the study show that the protection and enhancement of marine vertebrate biomass carbon stores can potentially be one of the many strategies for conservation planning and climate change mitigation in the UAE. And more recently, as a follow-up to the UAE Blue Carbon Project, AGD completed the analysis of the first round of trial applications of the UAE Mangroves Animal Carbon Sequestration Project in partnership with the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, with the support of authorities from each emirate. So in a limited first phase, the project focused on a single common landform called cores, or coastal lagoons, found in Abu Dhabi and the Northern Emirates, to conduct a test trial to determine mangrove soil carbon sequestration rates across the Emirates using radiometric dating techniques. The project findings will aid the development of emission inventories, as well as present an opportunity to incorporate carbon sequestration dating within national policies and strategies and inform coastal management. Lastly, the carbon sequestration dating in UAE mangroves has been included in the UAE's second nationally determined contributions to the UNFCCC late last year. I think that's all for AGD. Thank you so much, and back to you, Gabriel.
Thanks very much, Angela. And again, I think the Abu Dhabi demonstration project was, again, one of the great successes and a great example of integration of blue carbon knowledge and ecosystem services in different kind of levels of national governance. So congratulations to Abu Dhabi and to AGD. So as we move into the panel discussion, I'd like to remind the audience that if they'd like to ask any questions, please do ask them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. We've had a couple of comments already. James Cairo from Kenya has made a comment on collaboration with Mozambique, and it's great to see these connections being made. And we have another comment here from Sierra Leone. So please, if you feel free to just ask questions as we continue with the discussion. So to set up to start this conversation, I'd like to ask each of the panelists an individual question related to their work and to the national process of incorporating blue carbon and blue forests kind of values in their policies. So let's start with Angela in Abu Dhabi. Could you describe to us? You mentioned that the scientific values, the data had been incorporated into different levels of governance within the UAE. And Dorothy Herr as well in her presentation spoke about how blue carbon is not just about carbon market projects and carbon credits, but it's also can be about how you include this information in the national framework. What was very interesting in Abu Dhabi was that it wasn't just at the national level. There were many levels of governance where kind of blue carbon data and information and values were included. Could you describe maybe some of the different levels of governance that you worked on and that were influenced by this project? And what kind of the challenges and advantages of those different levels of governance might be? Thanks.
Okay, so at the Emirate level, as I mentioned, we worked with the Environment Agency through different partnerships, such as the Abu Dhabi Blue Carbon Demonstration Project, and then extending that project throughout the rest of the Emirates. So for the Emirate level, that's how it went. And for the national biodiversity strategy, all the national level policies, it was with the help of the ministry. And there is a high level of commitment coming out from our leadership at the Emirate level and at the federal level to explore more about blue carbon and to understand the science and to be able to use that as one of the forefront efforts to address climate change mitigation, and that's how it went for Ajiti in all its current projects. So to answer your second question on the challenges and advantages, for the challenges, there have been some challenges on the restoration and replantation efforts, and some mangrove die-off in some areas with the survival and growth rates of some of the mangroves. However, these are being addressed and looked into with the help of our external experts through our project workshops, such as our workshop on the annual carbon sequestration. And so these experts help individual Emirate authorities to improve the management of mangroves.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that experience. Yeah, I think it's really fantastic to see that kind of level of enthusiasm and commitment coming from the United Arab Emirates. So the next question is for Dalila in Mozambique. So Dalila, you mentioned that previously there had been many fragmented kind of legal tools for protecting mangroves, and that there was some confusion caused by the different legal tools and policies. But now they've all kind of coalesced around this national mangrove management strategy. Maybe could you describe a little bit about how this process took place, the history of it, and what kind of stakeholders you needed to bring together in order to come up with this strategy and have this success? Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. So yeah, it's been a long process actually, and there has been also a change of mandates within the government. So from the ministries, mangroves used to be mandate of the Ministry of Environment, and then only later on in 2015 it changed to the Ministry of the Sea, Inland Waters and Fisheries. So this change in mandate made a huge confusion, and a lot of people with a lot of background and experience that were working previously in this environment ministry, they were no longer working on mangroves, and people that were working and with experience on fisheries were actually taking over. So yeah, there was it was a long process as well. The development of the strategy actually started back in 2014, supported by this ministry, and then with changes in mandates of different ministries. There was a need to review and to develop a whole new strategy. So this has been a long process, and there was definitely a very big need of a good collaboration between stakeholders. As I mentioned before, there was a small group, but like a force group that was created from the different ministries, departments, and also including some NGOs. We were WWF Mozambique. We were coordinating the group that was developing the strategy. So in collaboration with the government, of course, and with other NGOs and civil society. So yeah, there were a lot of phases. So reviewing, and then once we had the draft of the strategy, it had to be shared among all the different ministries that had some kind of relation with the strategy, and to get some input and comments and so on, and approval. So it's been a long process, and we were very, very happy to in final be able to have the approval of this national strategy, which is also aligned with the NDCs, and has like some actions for and measures for adaptation and mitigation of climate risk, and promote development of low carbon emissions. So it's been a very interesting process, and luckily
Hi, I think we've lost the sound, Dalila. Is that just for me, or?
No, I think there's a technical issue with Dalila, so if you want to.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I think, sorry, Dalila, we've lost your sound.
Collaboration and engagement from all the different parties.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks for that comprehensive answer, and yeah, congratulations to WWF and to the government of Mozambique for coordinating.
Sorry.
This. No, can you hear me?
I didn't hear you. Sorry, can you please repeat?
No, just saying thank you very much for the comprehensive answer. And congratulations to the government of Mozambique and WWF for coordinating the process. It sounds like it took many years, but that interministerial coordination is really critical if we want to have sustainable management and protection of our natural resources. So I think it's a very kind of encouraging process. So the last kind of individual question that I'll ask is to Joseph in Kenya. So Joseph, you gave a very detailed history about the how the carbon market projects were developed in Kenya with the Mikoko Pamoja and Vanga, and now how Kenya is beginning to successfully incorporate and recognize mangrove forests and coastal ecosystems in the nationally determined contributions. Could you give us a little bit more insight into some of the challenges of that process, how it came about, and how you were successful in the end in getting blue carbon into your nationally determined contributions, your NDCs? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel. The problem starts from we have a number of competing issues, and also the focal point. In Kenya, mangroves occupy a very small percent, about less than 1% of the forest. So it's actually because it is small. It's in most cases, the focus is on the big ecosystems like the rainforest, the mountain ecosystems in Kenya. So that has been the the problem, the main challenge, government has been focusing more on the big, like what we have the big five. So we also have the big five in terms of the forest ecosystem, the water towers in Kenya. So that is one of the main challenge. Number two is that also data availability is another challenge because of their unique ecosystems. Sometimes it's very difficult to come up with a robust assessment. Most of the research which has been done on, in most cases, is on ecology, but issues like now mapping and also having robust techniques of, for example, carbon accounting, greenhouse gas emission from the mangrove ecosystem is a great challenge. However, with the information available using the basic tools like the Landsat, we are able to come up with Kenya has mapped the mangrove ecosystem, and that shown that work which is still going on. And this has shown that they have significant contribution in climate change mitigation. So this was the message which we took to the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. And then number two is also because Kenya hosted the Blue Economy Conference in 2018. So the focus by the government has shifted to the sustainable blue economy. And that is which gave us an opportunity, even though when we talk about sustainable blue economy, things like deep sea fishing comes into mind, but we have been able to create an awareness that in order to have sustainable blue economy, we must look at the coastal or the blue carbon habitats which contribute much more to this ecosystem. And this has been our I would say, launching pad to have this in the NDC. And this is the argument we took, that Kenya has opportunity, being member of the high-level panel on sustainable ocean, which was co-chairing with Pochoko. This was an opportunity to say, look, we have this ecosystem and we can benefit, we can have a lot of benefits here, the mitigation benefits, we can have adaptation and improving resilience of the coastal economy. So this was the main message which we used in order to succeed in having the blue carbon or what we call ocean climate solution into the Kenyan NDC. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. And yeah, again, congratulations for persevering and really raising the awareness of the importance of mangroves for climate change mitigation in Kenya. As you say, they might not be the biggest forests, they might not cover the largest area, but they're still extremely important and need to be recognized. Just a follow-up question, actually. You mentioned carbon accounting. And in Kenya, you have the voluntary carbon market projects in Gazi and Vanga, and then the NDCs. Is there any risk of double counting these carbon, I guess, reductions, carbon emissions reductions? And how do you mitigate the risk of double accounting?
Okay, even though the Vanga Blue Forest and the Mikoko Pamoja is very small, so but the Kenya Forest Service currently is documenting all projects, carbon offset projects within the country. We have about 4 or 5 voluntary carbon market projects in Kenya. We have one in terrestrial, and then the 2 we have, and there are others which are being initiated. So what the Kenya Forest Service is doing now is documenting and ensuring that all these projects are captured, so that in case of the accounting, we know that we have some voluntary carbon offset programs. So that is one way in which we are trying to reduce the risk of double counting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That sounds like a very good good process. So now I'll ask a general question that any participant, any panelist is welcome to answer. Just go ahead and switch on your camera and unmute your microphone and provide an answer. So the question is, if we've spoken a lot about mangroves and the national mangrove strategies in Kenya and in Mozambique. What kind of opportunities and challenges do you see, or experiences have you had with coastal ecosystems beyond mangroves? So, for example, seagrasses or salt marshes or sabkha or whichever kind of coastal ecosystems you have. Whoever would like to take this question, please go ahead.
Okay, maybe I can start. In Kenya, we are now in the process of bundling together the seagrasses with mangroves, particularly for Mikoko Pamoja and Fanga Blue Forest. So that is one way, and currently with collaboration from Napier University and the Nature Conservancy, we are now doing in-depth assessment of seagrasses, because we have seen that mangroves is being recognized, but now the seagrasses needs to be recognized. So that is what we are doing now. Is we are bringing in also that now with the help of even UNEP, we are now in the process of bringing awareness again that, look, we have the mangroves, but now we have the associated ecosystems like the seagrasses, which need to be also addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. And yeah, we're very excited about this collaboration and, kind of exploring more the potential of seagrass in this area. I'd like to open that up to anybody, to also the same question to Dalila and to Angela, if they would like to give experiences from Mozambique or Abu Dhabi on the same issue. Dalila, please.
Yes, sure. Thank you. So, although mangroves had received a lot more attention than seagrasses, and seagrasses are a lot less understudied and not so, there isn't so much projects or initiatives related to seagrasses. There are some new research going on, some new initiatives focused on seagrass management. And there's like some piloting initiatives specifically related to restoration of seagrasses, which has been conducted through the Eduardo Mondlane University at Inhaca Island, which is further south near the capital of Mozambique, and also at the Inhamban Bay. So although it's still in at the very initial phase, there are some quite interesting and positive results. So there's definitely more interest, and there's also at regional level, there's in 2020, last year, a methodological guide was approved for seagrass restoration in the region. So there's some interesting movement going on in relation to seagrasses in Mozambique.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
That's, we're aware of the amazing work of Salomão Bandeira, I think, on seagrass restoration. So I think there's a lot to learn from there, and some really innovative kind of seagrass restoration techniques that could be trialed in other parts of the world as well. Angela, would you also like to say a few words on this issue?
Yes. So for a GD, or for Abu Dhabi, there are some initiatives that are also still in the planning phase to extend our study on the UAE mangroves annual carbon sequestration project to other coastal ecosystem habitats, such as, so we will potentially be looking at not only seagrasses, but also algal mats and other habitats that have not been looked into yet, but we are planning to do that. So that's one of our plans for next year, that's what Ajiti will be working on in the future.
Cool, thanks very much. And yeah, I remember during the first days of the Abu Dhabi demonstration project, there was some really interesting research on the seagrass and the algal mats in Abu Dhabi. So we look forward to hearing more about that as that progresses. So another general question, let's talk a little bit about education and outreach and how important that is in shaping and influencing blue carbon policy, and any experiences that you might be able to share from your respective countries. I'll open the floor if anybody has any kind of good experiences about education and outreach in local communities. Angela, please.
If I may start. So Ajiti, together with the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi, has been working on some 360 virtual tours of our protected areas. We did one for Eastern Mangroves, and then in Al Wathba, and now most recently in Burkina. So these have been quite helpful, especially with the start of COVID. Everyone is at home, so they could explore and see these protected areas from their home. And because within those virtual tours, there are some infographics about the area and all that. So we have promoted that through our channels and through EAD as well. So that has definitely helped with raising awareness about blue carbon and blue carbon habitats, and just raising awareness and introducing those habitats to the public.
Thanks. That sounds really fantastic. We'd love to see that. If maybe we could even go on the tour ourselves. Please share that. That would be really cool. Dalila, would you also like to say some words on this issue?
Yes, in relation to outreach, I am currently based up north in Mozambique at a marine protected area called Primeiras e Segundas Environmental Protected Area. It's a very large area. A lot of communities live in this region. So we do quite a lot of awareness raising and outreach for the local communities. And one of the good vehicles that we found to raise awareness about the importance of mangroves and mangrove management by the communities and so on is working with the community radios. So we are in a very remote location, and there's no like TV or newspapers. People don't use internet and things like that. So the community radios have shown to be a very resourceful way of sharing the messages, which are shared in Portuguese, which is the local, the national language, but also on the local dialects, to make sure that it reaches all the people and all the communities in this area. And it's been very interesting to hear the feedback from people we meet in community meetings, for example. They say that they're hearing, they're listening, and they're learning a lot. And we can see there's more people getting engaged in mangrove management. So yeah, that was what I wanted to share. We also work with local schools, engaging students in different activities, in like theater and plays and drawings on making murals in the villages and things like that. So yeah, it's been a really interesting way to spread the message.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful example of kind of understanding the context where you're working and understanding the most effective ways of communicating to different sectors in society. So really, wonderful example from Mozambique. Joseph, would you like to say a few words about outreach and education?
Okay. Mostly like a number of activities we are doing. We are also collaborating with the academia or research, I mean the universities in Kenya We have a number of students who are attached to our program. And then we also carry out outreach or training to the communities. Even recently, with the support from the French embassy, we were able to train community members, including the forest managers, who are the ones who are managing the mangrove ecosystem. And more so, because of the constitution stipulates that there should be public participation in all activities. So this has become an avenue in which we are able to educate the public. We also use media, the media like recently Nation Media has been running series every Sunday, and we have been able to even use that platform to communicate about the blue carbon and NDCs. That is during the first series, we were able to have our work published in the Nation Media Group of the first series in the climate, which was adapted climate or series towards the COP26. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. I think another great example this time of using the media for outreach and education. And also, yeah, very happy to report that I also managed to read that that piece in the Nation Media. So congratulations. We'll go now to a question from the audience. Susanna Maingi. So her question is, she's interested in understanding and learning, what is the first step in supporting a small local association in participating in blue carbon projects, and how can interested parties join the program? This sounds like a very kind of bottom-up approach, including community, communities from the beginning in participation of project development. Can I throw that question to Joseph for perspective from Kenya?
Okay, come again. What was the question?
The question is, so what is the first step in supporting small local associations in participating in blue carbon projects? So you mentioned the CFAs, for example, the Community Forest Association.
Yes. Yeah. So that it depends on one. It depends on the land tenure system. I know different countries have, like in Kenya, all mangrove forests are government land. So it is managed by the government. So depending on the existing legislative framework, the first thing is to have the strength, or to have the local communities in an organized manner. If the legislation allows them to come up with community structures, and then that is the first stage and then also give them some basic training on governance issues, because that is one of the issues. So actually the first step is to look at the situation, the legislative framework, existing framework, work with that framework now to organize the local communities in participation.
Thanks, Joseph. A very clear answer. Maybe any lessons from Mozambique on the same question, Dalila?
Hello. Hi. So on the Blue Forest project, we were working more at a policy level, so not so much at community level, but on my work with WWF at Mozambique and at the Marine Protected Area where I'm currently based, yes, we have been engaging with local communities, and it's first steps include awareness. Our communities here in Mozambique, some of them have a quite, let's say, a basic knowledge of the resources of the mangrove management. some of them, they are at different levels. So some of them have been more engaged for many years, others a bit less. So you kind of need to get the understanding of the area where you are working. And locally, communities are organized in natural resources management committees. So they are already organized, and they have what we have been doing here is building capacity so that they have a bit more knowledge about how to manage the mangroves, for example, how to do the monitoring. And we are providing some equipment and some capacity, providing some training as well. And that is how we have been building their capacity to be able to be more engaged in mangrove projects.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dalila. Any reflections from Abu Dhabi?
Hi, but for Abu Dhabi, it's the same. Our projects were carried out for policy, but as I read about the Abu Dhabi Blue Carbon Demonstration Project, unfortunately, I wasn't part of that. But they did involve coastal carbon scientists and observers from throughout the region in that project to be able to develop or increase capacity building amongst those observers, and for them to be able to create this science and data management tools to create the to create the methodologies that will help them monitor and manage mangrove ecosystems.
Thanks, Angela. And another general question from the audience, and quite an interesting question actually. There's, as there's kind of increased advocacy for blue carbon to be included in NDCs and naturally determined contributions. Do the panelists think there is potentially a danger that this could distract from the larger goal of reducing carbon emissions from energy use and other sources? Any thoughts on this?
I think the best approach is there could be danger, but the best approach is to have all these activities as complementary work, so that we don't leave the other aspects of reducing reducing emissions. So it should be complementary.
Yes, I agree. I don't think it's an either or. I think both approaches have to be taken, both the emissions reduction and nature-based solutions such as blue carbon. Any reflections on that question from the other panelists? No, then I think the last general question before we wrap up for today, and that is, right at this moment in time, and over the last decade or so, we only have a small handful of successful blue carbon voluntary carbon market projects around the world. So there's a few kind of nice examples out there. What do you think is needed to significantly increase these projects regionally, globally, to increase the number, to increase the size? What are the barriers, and what do we need to do about them? I'll open that up to the panelists. Dalila, please.
Maybe I can start, and the panelists can build on. So I think that some of the key steps to increase the blue carbon acceptance, the voluntary carbon markets,
Hi, we seem to have lost Dalila. I think she was going to say something very interesting, but it looks like the connection has frozen. If we can get her back on the line later, she can finish her answer.
Hello?
Oh, are you back?
I'm here, I think.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think you might have to repeat your answer, please.
Okay, no problem. So I was talking about some of the steps that I think, or the points that I think should be considered to be able to increase the acceptance of projects, either regionally, nationally, or globally. I think the wide dissemination of successful projects is one of the key steps. Also clarifying very, very well the steps in a very, to implement the projects in a very simple and very clear manner. Showcasing results, for example, and sharing lessons learned. I think those are very, very important and key steps. I'm talking about, for example, here in Mozambique, it's not very widely known. And, you know, when people don't know about something, it's a bit more difficult to understand and to have the buy-in. So there's definitely a need of more capacity in terms of technical and scientific capacity to deal with this kind of blue carbon projects. So yeah, that's what I would like to share from my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you for that valuable insight. Any other reflections on that question? Joseph, please.
Yes, I think to add on what Delila said is that we also need to refine the techniques and tools for assessment because that is the main challenge. Is unlike the terrestrial system, even the red plus, where even though they are still developing, is advanced. So I think the most appropriate way is to build capacity in terms of tools, and then also in terms of carbon assessment, so that we have robust techniques in order to expand on this. I think that is one of the challenges we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. Good answer. Angela, would you like to reflect on that? And then we'll have to close the session.
Yep. So I definitely agree with Dalila and Joseph. For a GD, our goal is to bridge the gap, the information gap between those who have the challenges and those who need guidance, between those who are experts and have the solutions. So for a GD, it's continually exploring innovative methodologies to understand more blue carbon and what it's about and its further potentials, and to leverage our wide network of experts and stakeholders at the local, national, regional level, and to continue to coordinate and collaborate on advancing blue carbon science throughout all these scales, and to bring that information to light to allow policymakers and decision makers to consider its incorporation into national policies and international commitments.
Thank you, Angela. And I think that's a perfect way to wrap up the session. It's been, hugely enriching. I'd like to thank all the panelists. Before we wrap up, could all the panelists switch on their video, please? So we can take a photo of everybody together, a group photo. Thanks. Olivia, maybe you could tell me when we are good to go.
Oh, yep, we're good to go. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, it's just for me to now to thank the panelists. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Dalila. It's been hugely enriching, very interesting. We've learned a lot and great perspectives from very different parts of the world, from Mozambique, from Kenya, from the United Arab Emirates. Three, I think, of the great leaders globally on blue carbon. So really, really great to have you here. And to all the people in the audience, I hope it's been interesting to you. I hope you've learned a lot. I hope you've been inspired as well to initiate your own activities on blue carbon and blue forests and protect our important and critical ecosystems. And I'd like to remind you all that to please join us again next Thursday at this same time from 10 to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or 4 to 5:30 p.m. Central European Summer Time for a webinar on social justice and Blue Forest communities, where representatives from community organizations in Kenya, Madagascar, and Ecuador will be joining to discuss the significance of ensuring equity access and justice in community-based Blue Forest projects. So that sounds very, very interesting and very relevant, and I think hugely important as well. So on behalf of the Blue Forest Project, I want to thank you all for coming, for joining, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.